Underdog Fantasy is the fastest-growing fantasy app and easiest place to play fantasy sports. Just jump on UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app, draft your team, and that's it. And if drafts aren't your thing, they also have a pick'em game where you can win 20 times your money in a single night. Use promo code RADIO, and Underdog will double your first deposit when you sign up with up to $100 in bonus cash. Deposit $100, get $100 free. That's promo code RADIO. Terms and conditions apply.
You made it. Here. Finally. Checked out of office to check into the sweet views of that place you've always wanted to go. You know the one. It's nice. Even the kids like it.
This place is so cool.
And they never like it.
Mom, can we go to the pool?
Look at that. Not even asking for the Wi-Fi. When you're with Amex, it's not if it's going to happen, but when. American Express. Don't live life without it.
If I came this way...
Welcome to the Psychovertical podcast. It's me again, Andy Kirkpatrick. I'm I'm laid on the settee. What day is it? It's Thursday. I'm laid on the settee, so I might sound a bit strange. What's that woman? What's that? You know that band Texas? Whatever. That woman in Texas. Apparently she did a whole album like laying on a settee. Like changed the sound. So it's about 12 o'clock on Thursday. I didn't go to bed till 2 because I was in Newcastle yesterday on tour. So I'm a bit wasted. I've got Lancaster tomorrow, which is Friday. So I just thought I'd get this podcast done on time because it's it's good to get these things. It's good to get these things on time. It's funny when you're really getting into listening to your podcasts. It's kind of if a new podcast doesn't turn up, it's kind of this. It's sort of it's sad. Like you're really waiting for something to, you have like this. Like they're almost like your friends, and you just want to listen to hear them. But so it's kind of sad. Like there's a few, like I think that Eric Weinstein's podcast. He hasn't done one for almost like 6 or 7 months or something. So yeah, maybe it's a bit like when I went to sixth form when I was a kid. So when I was a teenager, I was doing art and history A level, which I failed. I failed at both of them. But so I started going to sixth form. I don't know why. I think I wanted to go to art college, so you need to have an A level to go to art college. So I started going, and I kind of had this idea that it was going to be this this kind of collegiate atmosphere and all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't really. It was just a bit shit. Like I really love history O level, but basically I was just like sitting. There's only 2 people doing history A level, and we both basically sat in this. The school I was going at, they were closing it down, and they were amalgamating it with another school, which then eventually they closed that one down as well. So none of them exist anymore. It was basically like we've got these 2 shit schools. Let's amalgamate them, and if we make them into if we make 2 shit schools together, we'll maybe make a good school. But basically just made an even bigger shitter school than they had before, so they just knocked it all down. I don't know what happened to all the kids, but maybe just left them in there. But I had this anyway, so I had to walk to the other school to do history A level, and it was like every couple of days you have to go over there, and literally you just sat in this room with this kind of tired old teacher who looked like he'd just rather like drink himself to death, and he would just literally just read from his notes, probably from when he did, history at school, like 50 years before, and it was just so fucking boring. All you were doing was sitting there, just writing out, you might as well just give me the bits of paper. I'll just take them, just photocopy them, give them to me. So my handwriting was terrible, so I couldn't actually read my own notes anyway. So it was pointless, a pointless exercise. So yeah, but when I did history, O-level history, one reason I like the O-level history was everyone was like scared shitless of the teacher. It kind of went around that he was some sort of like karate black belt, but he just didn't take any shit. So he had a lot of discipline in that classroom, and it was just really interesting. He was a very good teacher. He was probably like the only good teacher in that whole school, I think. So what was my point? I was talking about history, school. What was I started talking about? God, I can tell I'm tired because I can't. Let me see. Let's go backwards in time. So I was talking about history, doing history. Yeah, sixth form. That was it. So anyways, I had a shit sixth form. I had a shit history teacher, and also I was supposed to be doing art, but there wasn't even a fucking art teacher to do A level. So I was just like left on my own devices. I would just basically left on my own devices. God, school was so shit in those days, and so I started going to sixth form for like a couple of, maybe like a month and stuff, and then I just sort of stopped going. And my mum was working, so my mum would go to school, and I'd be like, I have to go in later on. And then I just like sat at home. I used to watch Spinal Tap every day. I literally watched Spinal Tap like hundreds and hundreds of times. I just watched that every day, and used to watch Neighbours. That was kind of cool. I basically became a bit reclusive, really. These days they would say I had something wrong with me, like I had depression or whatever. Anyway, eventually I decided I should go after 7 months. I decided I should go in. And no one seemed to ask where I was or anything. Because the school was basically closing down anyway. So anyway, after about 7 or 8 months, I thought I'd better go in and just sort of see what was going on. I could probably just rock in there and no one would notice. Anyway, I turned up and it wasn't there anymore. It'd been knocked down. So yeah, so it'd all been knocked down, and it basically moved to a sixth form college somewhere else. So at the beginning of the next year, I went to that, started going to that college, and just. But that was shit as well. It was kind of a bit better, but I was just shit. It wasn't the college. It was shit. I was just shit, and I didn't get any A levels at all. So it was a bit of a pointless 2 years. And what was my point? The point about not going in. Why was I talking about sixth form? Oh God, this is going to be like a fucking rambling podcast. I was talking about not going in. Talking about going to Newcastle. Talking about. I can't even remember. I can't even remember my train of thought. I'm gonna have to. Maybe I should rewind it. So I said, "Hello, I'm tired," and something about sixth form. It was something about not going in. I think it was that idea about not going in. What did I say? Coming late. Oh God! Never mind. I'll no. It'll come to me. So I was talking till I didn't get into 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's always kind of like when you're on tour, the big thing is to not get too tired, because tomorrow, I've basically got four gigs, one after the other, starting tomorrow. So you just kind of get worn down, and the tighter you get, your brain starts going. And because you're standing on the stage, you haven't got any notes or anything. You just have to be a little bit on the ball, because you can get you can kind of forget where you are. Like yesterday, I was on the stage and I couldn't remember the name of Lou Kenya, which is a crag I climbed at in Kenya, and then I couldn't remember Hell's Gate, which was another crag I climbed at. And he actually I just had to say to someone in the audience, "Anybody know where this is?" And he was like, Hell's Gate. I was like, that's the one. So yeah, you start losing it a bit. Like I was thinking about when I had this job on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the Tim Burton film. You're on a set, and the lighting is exactly the same. Like the reason you have a set rather than filming outdoors, is you can completely control the environment and the lighting. So you just literally press a button, and the lighting is exactly the same every day. Weeks on end. And the problem with that is you don't get any sense of time because the light doesn't change. And that job was so boring that after about 2 months of being on this ginormous set that's in the 007 soundstage in Pinewood Studios, like after 2 months, sometimes I'd be standing there and be like, have I just got here or am I about to go home? Like, what day is it? Like, I literally had no idea where I was or what time it was. It was because it was just like this, like every day was exactly the same. So someone told me a story that they were in the SAS and they got this guy and who was on some kind of interrogation training, and they put him in a barrel, like a oil barrel, and they closed it, and then every hour they put some food through the bottom. Like put his breakfast in and then his dinner in, and then every hour. And he thought he'd been in this barrel for like a week, but he'd only been in there, for like 2 days or something. Sure, 2 days is bad enough. This is why am I talking about this? I don't know. So it kind of went again, like all the gigs. They're all like not as busy as they'd usually be, but you just have to. It's all about the aggregate of how many bums on seats you have for the whole tour. And so I was driving back from there. It was like at midnight. I had to stop at the services to get some coffee, so I didn't like to crash my car. And the woman working in the coffee like Costa Coffee in the services, like the services were completely dead. This like woman all by herself, like working behind the thing. And I was thinking, like, Christ, like what a job. Just because often, like, if you have a shit job, but what makes it not shit is the people you're with. Often you can get like a good job with shit people or a shit job with good people, and it's better to have the, like, in the long run. In the short term, you can deal with shit people, but in the long term, you're better with people who make your life better, really. And so I was thinking, often when you work in that kind of retail kind of hospitality thing, people don't treat you like a human being. They just think you're of a remember Transformers? It was like Transformers, robots in disguise. So there's, someone who worked in the shop, and someone used to go, part-timers, robots in disguise. Anyway, that guy actually, Weird Steve he was called, he actually turned up on University Challenge, which is kind of weird. Anyway, so I was trying to talk to the woman like she was a human being, and I was saying, do you meet many vampires? Do you get many vampires coming in here? And I was saying you could make a really good sort of Buffy the Vampire Slayer series, but with a woman who works in Costa, who fights vampires and things. Although it'd be quite hard because you'd have to be available to make coffee for like truck drivers and people who drive around at night. There's only one other guy in there. There was one other guy in there, and it was kind of weird in that he had really badly shaved hair, like maybe someone else must have done it because it was like really patchy. And then I was wondering if maybe he had tattoos under his head, but I think it was just really bad shaving. But when I went outside, he was in this big van, and it was called like some like 5-star kebabs or luxury kebabs or something. And he was basically frozen kebabs, and he would drive. It looked like he was probably driving around the country at night delivering luxury kebabs. It wasn't luxury. The word was. It wasn't. It was like a really inappropriate term. Inappropriate as in it just was like just over the top. It was it was like like royal kebabs or something something like that. So originally I thought when I drove up that he was someone who did brakes, and I was going to go and ask him because when I was driving to the gig, suddenly there was this like rattly sound. Like I've just spent like 700 quid on my car getting it fucking mended because the people who did the, it got a service like a year ago, had a new timing belt on, and they didn't put a bolt back in, so the timing belt has been rubbing. So they luckily I've been driving all over the country. Luckily, it didn't go. But anyway, I still had to pay for 700 quid. So it's like snakes and ladders. You're making money, but you're spending money in the process. So I just thought it is what it is. So I anyway, so I just paid all this money, and I'm driving to Newcastle, and suddenly this like weird sort of noise, and like coming from the side of the car, and I sort of pull over, and I'm like, oh, maybe it'll just disappear. I start driving again. It's like, no, it sounded like something was dragging on the bottom on the ground, but just couldn't see anything what the problem was. So then I ended like going up to a guy in a van. I was like, excuse me, if I just drive up and down on this like the parking area here, can you tell me where the sound's coming from? And luckily he was down with it. So I just like drove really slowly backwards and forwards, and he was like, it's coming from your wheel. So I ended up having to like lift the car up. Like, luckily all my training from Africa, I had to like literally change a tire every day. So I'm very good at it now. So I lifted the car up, took the wheel off, and then there was behind where the brake is, the brake pads, there was like a metal plate that somehow come off. It looked like some sort of protection plate, maybe, hopefully. Anyway, it kind of come off, and it was sort of like banging into everything. So I just had to take that off. It was off anyway. Take it off, and then shove it in the boot, and then put the wheel back on, and then keep driving. So that's a job for me to fucking sort out. But it's like it's impossible to get anything done at the moment because nobody has any staff. Like no garages, no nothing. So it's it seems to be the a thing. So I'll just have to drive and just hope my wheel doesn't fall off or something. So I almost went up to this guy with this piece of metal I'd got off my car and say, excuse me, do you know what this is? Seeing as he's like sold fucking kebabs, he'd be like, no. He'd probably think it was it actually looked like it had some sort of weapon. It looked like a scythe or something. He'd probably think I'm going to murder him or something, which could actually fit in quite well with the Buffy the Vampire Slayer thing. I could be like some kind of serial killer. It was a really good program called. It was like a really old. It's like from the 60s or 70s. Was it called something? It's called Night Stalker. It was like a man's name, Night Stalker. It was an American program, and that was kind of cool. It was like a guy who was like a reporter who went around, and he had to every episode like there'd be like a vampire or the Yeti or something. That was kind of cool. Anyway, so you could make like a version of that, but with someone who works at Costa Coffee. You'd have to change the name because you wouldn't be able to use it for licensing. You'd have to call it like Roster Coffee or something, or Rawbucks, or Costa Bucks or something. So yeah, but anyway, I was trying to cheer the woman up, and I wasn't cheering. I'm sure she was happy. She thought she was happy, and I was telling this thing. I'm like, everybody. Every job that people do, no matter how bad it is, like through that job they learn some wisdom about humanity, about the world. And I'm like, so I always give the example. I've probably said this before. This example of I once asked somebody who sold ice cream in an ice cream van. I was like, what have you learned in your life from selling ice cream to people? And he thought for a minute, and then he was like, people really fucking love ice cream. So anyway, so I said this to the woman. The woman laughed, and then maybe sometimes you're not really used to somebody being like, you think like, why is this random person being so chatty? Like, is he on drugs? Like, is he gonna rape me? Is he a psycho or something? It's kind of sad, isn't it? I think the same that when people, in Ireland everybody is quite chatty. So you ask the directions and you get like. Like in America, if like people just tell you, you could be on the bus and you're the Dalai Lama, and basically the person behind you just starts telling you about themselves, without saying, oh, you look like a very interesting person. Where are you from? And it's like, I am from Tibet, but my he could tell you, okay, great story about, being, I was the chosen one, and then China invaded my country, I had to flee, and now I basically, hang out with superstars and stuff. I was funded by the CIA and all that kind of stuff. But, but they don't, all they do is just like talk about themselves, basically. But in Ireland, people, if you ask directions, people will basically tell you a big long tale, but it's always really interesting. It's never really about them. It's always about other people and stuff. It's kind of cool. Although these days people probably do it less because they're probably terrified that you're gonna, just by talking to someone, that they're gonna kill you. So so I was like, but I mean, she didn't seem very. People are often not very forthcoming with telling me their wisdom of what they've learned in their job selling coffee. So I had to sort of, I'd sort of set it up now. You had to keep going. So I was like, well, what? I was like, do you think most people, if you actually ask them, like quiz them on the coffee, would they actually know what it is they drink? So what's the difference between a flat white and Americano? Or what's the difference between, this coffee or that coffee? Because I was once in a coffee place, and I ordered a latte, and the guy was like, latte, the coffee for people who don't like coffee. And it's probably true, really. So you probably, I once went to an Indian restaurant, and we ordered some poppadoms, and the guy refused to give us any. And he said, I would not give my children crisps before they had their tea. And I thought it was quite cool. Anyway, quite a cool thing to say. But one of the people got really upset, like, I want poppadoms. You're here to service me and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. But anyway, poor. Yeah. So I didn't. Maybe it's not poor. I had a little conversation about. They have these kind of like vegetable based. I keep saying that, but anyway, plant based, not bacon sandwiches. Where it looks like a bacon sandwich. And you pay for it, and you get in your car, and you're driving along, and you open it. It's like, what the fuck's this? And it's like those Razzler. Is that a porno magazine? Razzler something. Any Rizzlers? Are there Rizzlers? I know that we make cigarettes out of. Anyway, it was just this like, it's supposed to look like bacon if you've never seen bacon. If someone's describing over the phone what bacon would look like, that's what this looked like. Anyway, it was like absolutely disgusting. So yeah, that's that. I need to read the. You shouldn't really be putting fucking non-bacon sandwiches next to bacon sandwiches. That's like you should have a completely separate place for them. Ideally, like in a skip, because the woman said no one buys them. Only people who buy them are idiots like me who don't really pay attention to these things. So yeah, I keep using the word vegans in my talk, and I have to be. I think I might be losing people because people don't like that kind of, that offensive kind of language. So, I had a little. I suddenly thought about something. Then I had a little aside. Was it about bacon sandwiches? What was it? What was it about? Like I know I'm rambling here. I'm gonna get to the point in a minute. Bacon sandwiches. I bought a bacon sandwich. Oh yeah, that was it. When I was in Newcastle, I needed to get some food. Because it's good to eat something before you go on stage, and it's good to eat something in the half time, because otherwise you have a bit of an energy dip. So I went over to there was like opposite the Newcastle Opera House, Newcastle Theatre and Opera House. It was like a little tiny corner shop, and I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember Mr. Ben. So Mr. Ben is this man who would go into a shop, into like a tailor's. And the man was like magic who owned tailors, and he would say, put on this uniform and then go through this curtain, and he would find himself in this magical world. So he'd put on the uniform of like, it wasn't First World War soldier, and he'd go through the curtain and he'd be in the First World War or something. Or he'd put on the uniform of a train driver, and he'd go through, and he'd be like, where there was trains or something. Anyway, this was like that, but it was to do with porno magazines. Because basically I opened the door, and there was Mr. whatever his name, who owns the Mr. Ben's shop, and there was just this massive big rack of porno magazines. Like no, it wasn't. It was like two massive racks. You usually have the top shelf, I don't even have it these days. You know, in the olden days, you had the top shelf was all porno magazines. Unless you're in Norway, all the porno magazines are on the bottom shelf, which is kind of weird. I think it's kind of, you know, indoctrinate children into it's okay, you know, like sex is not a bad thing. Well, it obviously is. So anyway, so they have all the porno magazines on the top, but they had like just two massive shelves of porno magazines, and there was no like Woman's World or Titbits or whatever. There was just like these two things. And I said to him, like, oh my God, like, what's going on? Like, it's like going back in time in here. And I thought, you know, the people not have the internet in these parts. It was really weird. He was like an Indian guy. And I bought two Snickers bars and some crisps. Not good healthy food for being on the stage, but it was okay. And it was like one of those places where it's like, oh, you have to spend more than £3 to use the card machine. Like, Christ, what's this? Anyway, that was another thing. When I went to the theatre, they said, like, what's the Wi-Fi code to use the theatre? And they're like, oh, we have to charge you to use the Wi-Fi. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, have I actually gone through some sort of wormhole? And I've gone back to, like, 2007. You know, it was like, it's kind of a bit weird, really. So maybe that's Newcastle for you. And Newcastle seems to be quite... You know, it seems to be stuff going on. There was a really odd, like, one-way system where, you know, you pull up at the theatre and they say, oh, you have to park in the car park, the multi-storey car park behind the theatre. But to get there, you have to go through this one-way system, which took about half an hour to go around to just get back to the other side of the thing. Maybe that was some kind of like time loop or something, wormhole that I went through. So maybe I did go back in time. But I seem to have come back to the real time now, so that's good. So yeah, and that perfectly leads on to what I was going to talk about. And I was thinking, I've got like a big list of things I'm supposed to be talking about, but I thought I'd talk about regret, because regret's a kind of interesting thing, isn't it? Like people don't really talk about it that much, but it is like a real sort of it's like a pillar in your life in a way, isn't it? Regret. I think often people who have like the least amount to be regretful for are also the most regretful, and maybe it's because like some people don't really have lives that they what's the word? It's not illustrated lives. They don't really think about their lives or their past or whatever. They're just always kind of. They're just not really interested about the. Some people aren't interested in the past, and they're not interested about the future either. They don't really think about it, and they just kind of go through life as if. Do you know those like video cameras you can put on your car that are on the front of your wing mirror, and they're filming everything that goes on, but they're only filming. You know, they're just overwriting themselves the whole time. You know, so it's just. Every hour it overwrites itself, and so there's no record of the past, and they can't see into the future. Although they're looking down the road, which is if you look down a road, it's kind of seeing into the future, if you know what I mean. So, but they're just overwriting themselves the whole time. So maybe a lot of people are like that. They just they don't really overanalyze the past, and they don't really think about the future. They just think that tomorrow will be like today, because yesterday was like today. So why would tomorrow not be like today? And it probably is. Well, I think some people, they spend a lot of time thinking about the past. Now, the Victorians, like nostalgia is different to regret. Nostalgia is probably the opposite of regret, because nostalgia is only remembering all the good things and none of the bad things, which is maybe like amnesia is maybe some form of amnesia or delusion is quite good, because I have this thing where like I never thought of myself as an ambitious person, but then when I met Ian Parnell, I thought he was the most ambitious climber I'd ever met, and he was like, but he thought I was the most ambitious climber he'd ever met, which is kind of weird. I was telling someone yesterday about I've met a friend who was in the military, and he was saying that when you're a climber, like if you're in like a military kind of what do you call it? Command structure. You're being told what to do and you have to do it. But when you're climbing, you're not. You're your own. You're commanding yourself basically. But I said what happens is usually you're with someone you kind of respect as a climber. You might not respect them as a human being, but you kind of respect them as a climber, or you think they're gonna not be too dangerous. So if they're going to be dangerous, they're going to be dangerous in a way it's not going to be. It's going to be positive for you, but not negative. So they might kill themselves, but they might do a really hard pitch, which you wouldn't dare do because it'd be too dangerous. But you have this kind of thing where you always see the other person as stronger and more motivated than you are, and you're kind of, you're a lesser climber, but they also feel the same about you. So you both kind of create a whole that the team of those two people makes one very, very positive, force, and that's what can keep you going. And the thing to avoid is for both people to voice doubt, or want to retreat at the same time, because you're trying to live up to that other person's standards that you imagine, and he's trying to live up to or she's trying to live up to your standards. So it's kind of interesting. It's probably a bit like if you're in any kind of, not management. If you're leading some kind of team or whatever, you have to try and pretend to be the person who is, like someone who people would follow. Like if people have no respect for you, or if you have no respect for yourself, well, you probably have no respect for yourself to some degree, but deep down you need to have some kind of respect for yourself. Otherwise, people will be able to tell, so they wouldn't follow you really. But that was this interesting thing about this guy I met who was Palestinian, and he was saying that Palestinians have no currency, they have no embassy, they have no passports, but they treat themselves, they see themselves as being someone worthy of respect. Where he compared like a Palestinian to an Egyptian, like he said, Egyptians are treated like shit in the Middle East by everybody because they think they're shit in a way. They have no pride basically. I'm sure many of them do, but a lot of them don't. Like you could slap if you were like a Saudi, you could slap an Egyptian in the face and they probably wouldn't do anything about it. But if you slapped a Palestinian in the face, they'd probably kill you. So that kind of self-worth, you do get it in some people, but it's probably dying out. It's probably not good to have too many people who have too much self-worth in this world. You don't know what they might get up to. So, but yeah, so this thing that like a Palestinian will fight to the death over a penny, I think he said, which is kind of interesting. That thing about Jewish people being tight. Like what's that joke like? Jewish person, and they have a fork in the sugar bowl or something instead of a spoon or something like that. But I wonder if it's not about like you basically Palestinians and Jews basically, that culture is basically the same culture really, So there is they have the most in common basically. Like someone who was, multiple generations living in Israel, Palestine. And a Palestinian, they have more in common than they have with anybody else in the world, but yet they're kind of well, we would believe that they're enemies, but they probably are like cousins, really. They are separated by religion and other things, but they are actually cousins. But a bit like they said that about when the war in Argentina between the British and the Argentinians, that we were like cousins because we had such a strong connection in loads and loads of ways. But I think the idea of like Jewish people being tight with money or whatever. There is that connection there between someone being, worrying over pennies and someone who kill over a penny. Like, it's not about the penny, it's about the respect that should be due to that person. If you know what I mean. Does that make any sense? So anyway, back to regret. So maybe there is, if you have this kind of amnesiac kind of state where you never really consider the past, it's probably quite good, but you're probably not being able to you probably limits your ability to mature and grow and learn from your mistakes. Like when you're on tour, you're going around, and every single night all you think about is all the fuck ups or the things you made a mistake at, or you could have improved, or the time people weren't laughing, or the time someone walked out, or the time someone's complained or whatever. You're never thinking about all the positives. You're regretting all the mistakes, and you don't like. I'm often very bad when someone asks for criticism. I'll just be really critical, and I always take it for read that they understand that I'm only taking the effort because I think there's so much good about it that it's worth the effort. Like, if it was shit, like, what's the point? But often people take it that all there is criticism. But that's kind of the way I'm always more interested in like 1-star reviews on Amazon than I am like 5-star reviews. Or 3-star reviews are, can be good. It could have some positive things in there. I don't like those Amazon reviews where it says, someone spends their whole life writing their book, and they put everything into it, like their whole life and everything else, just a million edits, and and then they get the first review is like 1 star, and it says packaging was damaged. It's like, you fucking idiot. Anyway, me being able to be regretful, to analyze things you said and what you did, and to be regretful is very, very important, I think. Like, I have this idea that I think in my children's life, I had the job of your parent, really, probably not being a parent, just being a human being, is actually to just sort of fucking man up and don't be a child, don't be a baby, don't be a child. Like, don't broadcast your own drama. You can, if you're having traumas and troubles and everything else, you can find an outlet for that with people who are close to you, who are adults. But I don't think you should do it in front of your children. I don't think you should be like, I'm really stressed, or be crying, or talking about your relationship problems, your divorce, and all that kind of stuff. I think you really have to like not let your kids see that. I know some people would say that's not right, because really kids should understand these things, but you get like an education and all that very quickly as you get older anyway. But you really want your parents, these people who are like stone, they love you and they will do everything to protect you, and they will shield you from everything until you get older. I have this thing where I once said, when I was a kid, and my mum was there. I was like, when we were kids, we were really poor. My mum was like, poor? You weren't poor. I was poor. You weren't poor. Which isn't true really, because I was aware that we had no money. Like, my mum used to say, how are we going to make ends meet? And I thought she meant like hen's meat. I was like, well, is that like just chicken or something? Anyway, so I was aware of that, and it's not my mum's fault for me being aware. But you had that kind of anxiety, that poverty anxiety that you can sort of get. So I do have regret. Like, I think when I got, when I broke up when I got divorced, I have this joke at the moment. Like I've basically had like 3 serious relationships in my life, and I've been married twice, and I've had like one relationship where I could have got married. And when I got divorced the first time, or split with my wife, I think it was kind of a long time coming. So it wasn't that big a deal in a way, and it obviously was a trauma for your kids. Again, that's the thing. You can sort of delude yourself and think like, oh, my kids are fine with it, and all that. You can like make all these stories up, but they're not fine with it. But I think as an adult, I think I probably dealt with that pretty well. And then like the second relationship that's got broke up like that, I handled that really, really badly. And I think that's like that's probably the biggest regret of my life, is not the first thing, and just in loads of ways. But I think look at like we all I think most women, I think women increasingly so, like young women, but less so, are in this kind of perpetual adolescence, and that we don't grow up. And I think we are, this kind of beta male, feminized man thing. And I think I definitely, although I was this person going off doing daring do, really I was like just being this sort of Peter Pan, not growing up kind of person, not being responsible and everything else. And I think that there were demands placed on me in like my second relationship that I wasn't capable of achieving because I wasn't a man in a way, and I think, but in the process of breaking up, I think I realized a lot of those things, and it kind of then made me mature enough to have like a third relationship, which kind of worked, because I was more. I think it's that kind of. I guess it's that what I'm talking about is emotional stability, which is in short supply these days. Like how you get that emotional stability. I don't know. Maybe you map it from your parents, really. Like my dad has been doing. Talking of regret, like my dad works for Samaritans, and he does work with like people with PTSD as well. And he's retired now. If you're listening to this, hope you don't mind me telling you your age. But anyway, he's like, he should be just retired now, playing golf. And I remember I said to him recently, like, you don't have to. You feel like you're torturing yourself and inflicting a lot of emotional pain on yourself by dealing with other people's shit. Like, I hope you don't feel like you have something to, pay, make amends for, like with your own kids and all that kind of stuff. Because I think as you get older, you often, but again, like regret is actually, again, like I was saying on the last podcast, it's often it's a manifestation of love and kindness and caring. Even if it was there was an absence of that in the past that made you say things or do things, like lash out or be angry or something, angry with your kids, angry with people you love, and all that kind of stuff. And often the people you love are the ones you could be the most cruel to, because you don't really, the people you have no thought for, care for, like it doesn't do any good to be, you're just a stranger, but you can really, you can be incredibly cruel to people you love, really. I think maybe because you feel like they've hurt you and you'll hurt them, but often all of it is just a miscommunication, and again a lack of being an adult about things. You sort of impulse control and everything else, and things can really like spiral out of control with people in your lives, like relationships with your family and everything else. So I think again, like as you get older, you see that you experience it through other people, and you're like, I must never allow those things to happen. I think now as I'm older, I really believe much more in early interventions of people being honest, like trying to communicate in a way, like trying to that why people, I don't know, it's like it's kind of don't make it all about you, in a way, like make it about both that like just try, like I just think we have like such a lack of actual real empathy these days. Like all we ever hear about is empathy, but we have almost zero empathy, and it's all about ourselves, but yeah, like trying to avoid things which will then be regretful later on. That's the way to do it. Instead of being regretful, like if you're estranged from people, just try and fucking sort it out. Sort it out before it's too late. Get in touch with people, reach out to people, because it's, there's some things that, some things that can't be sorted out. Some things just, and then you just have to die with them, basically. So it's, so yeah, trying to reduce the number of regretful incidents in your life as you're going on is good. It's thinking like, this is something that I am gonna, think about for the rest of my life if it's really bad. Like that, that's what, in some regards, it's like post-traumatic stress is basically a form of regret in a way. Sometimes it can be. I didn't do this, I didn't do that, I didn't say this, I left it too late, I could have stopped this, all these kind of things. And then there's like post-traumatic stress, which is just something so awful that it like, it's a bit like, when you see like a really bright light and it kind of like sticks in your eye. I think it's like that. Like something happens to you, experience something so awful that it kind of gets singed into your brain. It's there forever. It's not. It's So yeah, I'm kind of rambling on here. But like that, you could avoid all regret by avoiding anything that could create the chance of regret, which would be avoid all relationships, avoid any meaningful interactions with people, but then that would, would you not get to an age where you're like, I regret doing that. I regret having a life free of regret, and it's like that story about the monkey where they tried to find out how he could live as long as possible. So they got a monkey and they put it on like a vegan diet. It wasn't allowed to smoke or take drugs or anything. It didn't really. It couldn't have sex. And basically they managed to get this monkey to live like 20% longer than a normal monkey, but it was the most miserable monkey that ever lived. You know what I mean? So, like regret is the more interactions you have and the more things you do in your life, the more mistakes you're gonna make, because like mistakes are easy to spot in retrospect. Like, why didn't I do this? Like I've got so many mistakes to do with, like just keeping my mouth shut or being political or whatever, or just just playing the game basically. But I'm just not very good at it. So you can look back and you can sort of regret stupid things you did, which were really, really self-destructive. But again, it's like, then it's kind of, but you also have to look back and realize that those things, that lack of impulse control and lack of really caring about things or holding on to things that were important to you, also led to loads of other things. There's people who did everything right and played and did the political thing and were like a grey man, and they didn't get as far. So it's just, what's the opposite of regret? What's the opposite of regret? I have to email if you think what it is. Regret. It's not happiness. No, it's not regret. Contentment. Contentment. I don't know. It's kind of interesting thing. What's the opposite? Maybe it's just best not to. Maybe it is good to have it in your mind, of trying to avoid it, but at the same time, it could lead to far more regret. So maybe just with all these things, maybe just go with your instinct. Maybe just try and focus more on your instinct, and try and stick to have some sort of moral backbone, and some kind of shoot straight, walk the line, tell the truth, ish. Try and, instead of focusing on the regret, try and focus on the very simple set of principles that you can try and stick to, that should stop you. Don't kill people, don't shag people you don't really know, don't take shitloads of drugs, don't get really pissed, don't steal, all this kind of stuff. Because often a lot of regret come from those kind of things. Especially the murder, that's the worst. Depends who you're murdering, though. So yeah. Anyway, but ultimately, regret is part of life, and if you're alive, then you can regret things, and if you're dead, then you can't. So just kind of don't dwell on it too much. Don't waste your life thinking about. Do when you meet someone who's they've splitting up with their girlfriend, and that's all they fucking talk about, and some people that's all they talk about for the rest of their lives. It just ruins their lives. So you can have a little bit of regret time. Sit down and what do I really regret, and think about that thing, and then think what was the lesson from that. Don't open don't open your mouth, or don't ramble on, or don't say these things, or blah blah blah. And if you realize that you are going to make life difficult for yourself because of your character and your temperament, everything else, then just accept that's the way you are, and just don't regret it, but just try and be conscious of who you are. As you get older, you're more aware of who you are. So yeah. So that's it. That's all I've got. That's all I've got on regret. I'm not going to dwell on it anymore. But yeah. Just yeah. I'm sure on those cameras, the cameras where it's filming everything. I've never had one, but I'm guessing that probably the data's in there somewhere. You could go back and analyze it, but maybe just it serves a purpose. Your memory is there to serve a purpose. So just make sure it serves a positive purpose, not a negative purpose in your life. So okay, now gonna go off and get a cup of coffee, flat white, Americano, wherever, and until next time.
Experience the power of 5G with T-Mobile. With faster 5G speeds nationwide, you can upload your favorite videos super fast or game on the go. Plus, T-Mobile has more 5G bars in more places, so you can stay connected to what matters most from almost anywhere. Switch to T-Mobile today, the leader in 5G.
T-Mobile has America's largest 5G network, fastest based on median overall combined 5G speeds, according to analysis by Ookla of Speed Test Intelligence data. 5G speeds for Q4 2021. See 5G device coverage and access details at T-Mobile.com.
Moms, at Vanguard, you're more than just a parent. You're the heart of the family. You're the first responder to any need. You can be the hero and the villain, sometimes on the same day. Because you know that in the end, your legacy is the values you instill in them. At Vanguard, you're more than just an investor. You're an owner. Because the future you're building is bigger than yourself. Discover the value of ownership at Vanguard.com. Fund shareholders own the funds that own Vanguard. Vanguard Marketing Corporation, distributor.